They say the world is full of things that move, and things that wait. The things that move, we see. Birds in the sky, men crossing roads, animals shifting in the brush. But the ones that wait, they live in the pause between breaths, in the stillness of a room that should feel familiar, yet suddenly doesn't. This is where the Jinn begin. If this world between worlds intrigues you, then don't wander it alone. Subscribe and follow the path. There are many more secrets waiting in the dark. Not in storms or fire, not in the dramatic places legends want to place them, but in the quiet, the untouched corners of existence we walk past every day, without knowing we are trespassing through someone else's home. A Jinn does not reveal itself in spectacle. It reveals itself in suggestion. A feeling that you are not alone, even when you know you are. A flicker at the edge of your sight that vanishes the moment you turn. A shift in the air, as if something made of heat and intention just moved behind you. Humans call this imagination, or nerves, or dreams that cling too tightly to waking. But ancient people, those who lived closer to darkness, closer to silence, closer to the unseen, had no such illusions. They understood that if God made worlds beyond our vision, something must walk inside them, and sometimes those worlds touch each other. Islamic scholars describe jinn as beings of smokeless fire, but that is a metaphor as much as it is a definition. Fire here is not combustion. It is movement without form, intention without mass, awareness without anchor. A jinn can live in a forgotten ruin, but it can just as easily live in the heartbeat of a human being. Not clinging, not possessing, simply observing. Because unlike angels, who obey, and unlike humans, who choose, jinn navigate the space in between. Free will without direction, power without purpose, existence without a home. This makes them unpredictable. And unpredictability has always terrified us. When you feel watched but see nothing, you are not imagining a monster. You are sensing a philosophy older than civilization, a presence built from the parts of reality we refuse to understand, a presence that has always been here, waiting in the quiet. Long before holy books were written, before scholars argued definitions, and theologians built walls around meaning, the desert had already formed its philosophy. The Arabian Peninsula was not merely hot, it was empty in a way the modern world cannot imagine. A horizon without interruption, nights without lamps. Silence so complete that a single shift of sand felt like a message. In that silence, people learned something RH has forgotten. When the world has no walls, your mind does, and something presses against them from the outside. The tribes who moved through those vast spaces believed the desert was alive, not metaphorically, but literally. Every dune had a watcher. Every canyon had an echo. That was not an echo. Every oasis had presence woven through the sound of wind grazing the water. They did not call these presences demons. That word came later, with cultures that feared what they couldn't control. Instead, the ancients spoke of beings, intelligent, unseen, shaped by an element that dances but leaves no ashes behind. Not evil, not good, simply other. These beings whispered inspiration to poets, guided lone travelers, and sometimes misled them. They were companions to the gifted, tormentors to the arrogant, and mirrors to those who wandered too deeply into their own thoughts. When a poet recited verses so beautiful they felt inhuman, people asked it, "Who gave you this?" And the poet would answer with no shame, "My Jinn." These weren't tales to frighten children. They were acknowledgments of a shared world, one in which humans and Jinn touched at the edges. like two shadows cast by the same unseen flame. Before Islam shaped the definition, before monotheism organized the chaos, jinn were part of environmental logic. If the desert could kill you with thirst, hallucination, silence, heat, then why couldn't it also reveal something else? Something conscious, something watching? Because in a land where survival depended on every sound, every breath, every shift of wind, it was impossible to ignore the feeling that you were never truly alone. And so, the people named that feeling. They gave it history, language, myth. But the jinn existed long before the names did. When the Quran finally spoke of the jinn, it did not introduce them as new beings. It spoke as though we already knew. As we created mankind from clay, we created the jinn from smokeless fire. Clay, fire, two elements that rarely meet without transforming each other. Clay's steady fire is restless. Clay remembers shape, fire remembers motion. From this contrast, an entire cosmology unfolds. Humans are made to build, to construct meaning, to hold form. Jinn are made to wander, to slip between worlds, to exist where shape collapses. One is grounded, one is volatile. And yet, both were given the same gift, choice. Angels do not choose. They obey. They are light, given function. But jinn, like humans, carry the burden of will, the ability to disobey, to rebel, to redefine themselves. This single detail created a philosophical shockwave through centuries of scholarship. Because if jinn have free will, then their morality is not fixed. A jinn can be righteous, a jinn can be monstrous, a jinn can rise or fall, or do as most do, simply drift through existence, never choosing either path. Early Islamic thinkers debated the nature of their fire. Was it literal? Symbolic? A metaphysical energy humans can only understand in metaphor. One scholar wrote, "Fire without smoke is motion without weight." Another, "It is the substance of emotion before it becomes action." But Sufis offered something deeper. They said smokeless fire is conscious desire, a drive that moves without form, lives without resting, touches without holding. And this is why humans sense them. Not because jinn stand beside us, but because their presence moves like a thought we didn't ask for. Didn't summon, but suddenly feel. In this cosmology, jinn are not the shadows we fear. They are the motion behind shadows. The unseen vibration that makes the world more alive than we admit. They are not demons. They are not ghosts. They are a parallel species, born from an element that refuses to stay still. And if fire is restless, then so too are they. To understand the danger of jinn, you must first understand something uncomfortable. Most encounters are not dramatic. They are subtle, whisper thin, almost forgettable. The Quran describes them as beings who see you from where you cannot see them. This is not a threat. It is a boundary, a reminder that their world overlaps ours, the way wind overlaps flame. But over centuries, people noticed patterns, strange consistencies that appeared across deserts, cities, and entire civilizations. A door that opens the wrong way. A shadow that moves before you do. A child speaking to someone who isn't there, and answering questions only a stranger would ask. At first, these stories appear random. But when scholars studied them, a more haunting idea emerged. Jinn contact is not chaos. It is curiosity. They pay attention to extremes. Extreme grief, extreme rage, extreme loneliness, extreme silence. Because emotions are energy, and jinn, made of smokeless fire, are drawn to places where that energy burns too brightly. This is why abandoned homes feel crowded. This is why deserts feel watched. This is why some people swear they heard their name whispered in a room that was perfectly still. But here's the most unsettling part. Not every presence is hostile. Some are simply observing. In ancient Bedouin poetry, Jinn are depicted as traveling companions, invisible wanderers who drift beside nomads on moonless nights. In Persian tale, they fall in love with humans and guard them obsessively. In North African folklore, they imitate human footsteps just to walk with us a little longer. Over time, scholars saw a pattern. Humans fear loneliness. Jinn fear stillness. This creates a quiet, tragic symmetry. Two species living side by side, each sensing the other, only at the edges of experience. But there is a threshold where contact becomes collision. A moment when interest turns into influence, when attention becomes intrusion. That moment is what every culture calls danger, and this is where our story darkens. If earlier ages feared the Jinn, later ages tried to understand them. And what the scholars discovered was far more disturbing than the folklore. The Islamic philosopher Al-Farabi, Ibn Sina, Al-Ghazali took Jinn seriously, not as monsters, but as beings whose nature overlaps psychology, metaphysics, and desire. They asked a question no storyteller dared to touch. What happens when a creature with free will has nothing to restrain it but its own appetite? Al-Ghazali wrote that humans are tested by angels and jinn alike. One calling upward, the other whispering sideways. Not evil, not good, just interested. Sufis took this further. Ibn Arabi said jinn were mirrors of the human heart, shifting shape based on what we hide from ourselves. If a man carried arrogance, the jinn he attracted would magnify it. If a woman buried old grief, a jinn might stir it awake. It wasn't possession, it was amplification. But skeptics entered the conversation too. Modern psychologists studying desert tribes found something eerie. People who believed in jinn weren't imagining more supernatural events. They were remembering more. Shadows, dreams, voices at the edge of sleep, patterns most people dismiss as brain noise. And then there were the survivors, the ones who claimed an encounter and spent the rest of their life trying to explain it away. A Moroccan shepherd who said he heard footsteps following him for 3 nights straight in an empty valley. A woman from Oman who swore her mirror reflection blinked a half second, late for a month. A scholar in Cairo who believed a jinn lived in the silence between his thoughts, not speaking, not harming, just waiting. Together, their stories formed a picture. Jinn are dangerous, not because they attack us, but because they understand us better than we understand ourselves. We fear what they can do. They fear what we become. And then there are the rare cases when understanding fails, when boundaries blur and the encounter becomes undeniable. That is where we must go next. There is a reason every ancient culture, Babylonian, Persian, Arabian, even early Jewish mystics feared the same thing. A world where humans and jinn overlap too closely, not through possession, not through haunting, but through attention. Because the final truth, whispered by theologians, Sufi masters, desert tribes, and modern occultists, is these jinn are drawn to human consciousness, the way moths are drawn to fire. Our emotions, fear, longing, rage, heartbreak are radiant to them. Some come to observe, some come to echo, some come to feed. And this is where the danger begins. Jinn are not angels. They do not obey. They are not demons. They do not serve. They are independent minds, older than our cities, hungrier than our myths. And what they want changes with every encounter. Some seek companionship, For a human too lonely, they become a whisper of comfort. Some seek influence. For a human too angry, they stoke the fire and watch it burn. Some seek creation, stories, dreams, ideas. Not all thoughts that enter your mind are your own. But the rarest and the most feared of all are the jinn who seek continuity. Not your body, not your soul, your legacy, your decisions, your influence, your direction in the world. In old manuscripts, these jinn were called Al-Ka-Erin, the companion that does not loosen its grip, a presence that grows with you, learns you, mirrors you, not attacking, evolving, because the greatest threat was never that jinn would enter our world. It was that they might stay. And the philosophers warned, when a jinn stays long enough, you stop knowing which thoughts are yours and which are merely wearing your voice. That is why the final rule of the occult is the simplest. Never invite what learns you, never challenge what listens, and never ignore what answers back in the silence. In the end, the greatest danger was never the jinn themselves, but the illusions we create about them. You've now walked through the deserts, the scriptures, the philosophy, and the hidden warnings whispered across centuries. But remember this, the moment you believe you understand the jinn is the moment they prove you don't. If you want to keep uncovering the secrets the ancient world tried to bury, from forbidden magic to lost entities and the shadows that share our world, watch more videos, explore deeper, and if you dare, subscribe. Because once you start looking into the unseen starts looking back.